A class action lawsuit settlement has forced Philadelphia to reform parts of that city's controversial civil asset forfeiture program. The forfeiture laws have allowed police to seize property from citizens solely on suspicion of being involved with narcotics. The suit also established a $3 million fund to compensate victims who had their property taken away. Joining me now to discuss, Jillian Melchior, editorial page writer with the Wall Street Journal, and Brian Silber, a former prosecutor and current civil forfeiture attorney. Jillian, let me start with you because you wrote a great editorial on this recently, and you think this was the right decision?
Absolutely. So the issue here is that police and prosecutors are taking people's private property, often without even charging them of a crime, much less getting a criminal conviction. And I think in Philadelphia, it was particularly egregious. Just if you look at the scale of it, Philadelphia's got a smaller population than Brooklyn, but it was, and I think LA County too, but it was collecting way more. And then you also had the cops and prosecutors using this to pay their own salaries. There were several district attorneys where 100% of their pay came from seizing private property in this way. So I think you've got a corrupt profit motive, and sure enough, you saw a lot of abuses.
Brian, what are your thoughts?
Wow, I have a lot of thoughts actually to tell you about this. First, let me begin with civil forfeiture laws, when they were written, were good laws. These gave law enforcement a financial weapon to fight crime, and that's a good thing. You know, a drug dealer shouldn't be able to profit off his crimes, for instance. But here's the rub and here's the problem. It's abused. They're taking money from people who are actually innocent. This law is being over-applied, and they're casting too wide of a net where they're catching some of the bad guys, but a lot of innocent people too. And I'll tell you something. I take issue with the fact that there should be a prosecutor paid for money that was forfeited. That doesn't seem right to me. So I think I agree with that.
You know, though, Jillian, I've read where they're like in smaller towns where the entire police force gets their income from these forfeitures, from these asset forfeitures. And again, you know, people never get this stuff back. So if you were arrested or you were, if you were suspected of a crime, but it turns out you weren't, you're found innocent, or you never even go to court, you've lost your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the Institute for Justice brought this case, and one of their plaintiffs had actually owned a house. Son was caught outside dealing small drugs, like $40 worth, and they came and seized the entire house, the family property, evicted them, and then in order for them to get it back, imposed unconstitutional rules saying basically their son can never set foot in their house again. And I think those are the abuses that you see. It is almost impossible in a lot of these systems to get your property.
In Philadelphia, they're still doing it, though. Like, you know, whoever the community activists who are paying attention to this said nothing has changed.
Well, I think this is a pretty significant settlement. I think attacking the profit motive, the corrupt profit motive, is a really important reform. You're also now having oversight of this be seen by actual judges and juries, not by the prosecutor's office, which is getting a fifth of its budget from civil asset forfeiture.
Brian, we've had this topic before on the show, and law enforcement tells me that we're all making a huge mistake here, that this is absolutely necessary to fight crime, to fund law enforcement, and that it would be a grave mistake to do any sort of reform, and certainly to get rid of it altogether.
I disagree with that. You know, whenever you have a situation where Americans are losing their property unlawfully, that's not the right course of action. And frankly, I don't even think that the law needs to be changed. It just needs to be applied properly. You know, the example you gave earlier of the person who lost a home over a small drug transaction, that violates the excessive fines clause of our Constitution. It should never be applied that way. They should use these laws to fight the real criminals, but not use them to collect money from innocent people. And that's where I take issue.
Real quick, Jillian, so because of the precedent that Philadelphia established there, do you think now maybe this could be a move? Because there's been a lot of push-pull on this for a while, to maybe get something done nationwide on this issue? I
hope so. I think due process should be a partisan issue, and I think this is something that is prolific in its abuse. What the Philadelphia case does is send a warning, either shape up or get sued.
All right. Thank you both.